Let's maybe, first of all, give you a warm welcome. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for sharing your knowledge here with our cohort. And then let's dive into that. Like how, before we get started talking a little bit more about DAOs and also Ocean's Path, but like how did you experience that crypto winter of 2018? I mean, you were similar to the people in our cohort right now listening. You were starting out, Ocean was a year old, and then you get hit with this huge down market.
Yeah, so 2018 was gut-wrenching. It was an extremely difficult moment in time for every project. That was kind of like I don't know, it was where everybody had to pass through this funnel, just like evolution, and not many made it through. And in that case, the number one goal was, of course, to secure funding or extend your runway, cut out anything that didn't make sense, watch your head count, and just survive until you could get through the crypto winter. And I think the crypto winter lasted about 18 months, and we just kept our heads down. We were able to work with a team of about 12 people from 2018 until middle of 2019. And that's when crypto started picking up again. And it wasn't until the early 2020 where the market started going up. And we turned out to be one of the early leads in an emerging crypto market. So we were able then to, I think our best rank was 58 on CoinMarketCap, which now that I look at it would be phenomenal. So yeah, I mean, it's really gut-wrenching. So the main thing is make sure that you have sufficient runway, funding sources wherever you can find it, whether it's VC, the community, letting off people if you have to, just really looking at what is the core that you guys need to deliver and make sure that you can deliver on your vision.
Totally. And I mean, for you then to be able also to extend that runway, was of course, crucial. Like, how do you see it this time around, since so many funds in the crypto space just recently raised and a lot of it is not yet deployed? Do you see there will be a similar crunch nevertheless, because VCs will just keep on holding their money, or can they not even do that because they promised their LPs to invest within 2 years, but they could in theory give the money back also? Not all of it has been called by VCs. I mean, there's a lot of, I guess, potential outcomes, but what do you expect?
So you're absolutely right. The market is more mature. There's more money in the space. I was just in a meeting yesterday with somebody who's trying to deploy $3 billion into the crypto space, into projects over the next few months. So there is a ton of money ready to go. So maybe it's not going to be as gut-wrenching as 2018. I think that gives a lot of hope. The alternate, or the flip side of that is, this is VC hunting season, in the sense that if you are a good project, you have a good idea, your valuation is going to go down, halved, brought down 60%, but it's worth it because you need to survive. And so if you are getting VC interest, and they give you an offer, a low ball offer, it insults you and it forces you to dilute a little bit more. Hopefully you have buffer somewhere else, and it's worth it to take it to survive. But right now, the fact that there is still a lot of capital in the space means that I think you may have more choices than we did back in the day. One of the things that was different between then and now is there was no stable coin. So everybody in the crypto space had left their money either in Bitcoin or Ethereum, and Ethereum went down 85% also. So that made it particularly difficult for the teams in my cohort because we had no other exit except the fiat. And so now at least you have stable coins. So you have the choice of fiat or stable coins, which gives you a little bit more power. And then of course, hopefully there's more capital in the space.
Yeah, so you mean just that a lot of treasuries, and maybe your own treasury at Ocean, you had money kept in a stable coin that wasn't Terra, Luna?
No, we had our money in Ethereum and Bitcoin, and
back then, yeah.
Back then,
yeah.
Yes.
And now I meant now, like, now treasuries are a little bit more diversified in terms of in terms of what they have, and yeah, that makes totally sense, 100%. I mean, I guess a crisis this time around is a little bit different in the sense that it is also so macro related, which wasn't the case in 2018. And I can't I really wrap my head around it, like whether I think that is a good thing or a bad thing, in a way for crypto, right? Because in the sense that now that it is macro related, it seems that a potential kind of white knight in terms of the Fed maybe, you know, reversing course and deciding that, you know, okay, if inflation actually is under control, it's a lagging index, maybe we can, you know, hold off a little bit on raising interest rates, and then markets joyfully rebound, and maybe a little bit faster than in 2018.
So my impression here is that Bitcoin has been tested time and again as an alternative asset. But the reason why it was set up was because the inventor foresaw the printing of money and hyperinflation, hands down. We have not gone through that yet. So this upcoming test will likely be the test that proves the hypothesis of Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'm excited to find out. Obviously, if you're in the Web3 space, we have more and more believers. I've been in the space now almost 10 years, and we always obviously bet our future, our careers, and our projects on this concept. But the actual reserve currency of the space, Bitcoin, is now going to be tested in. Right now, what we've seen that it converges, Bitcoin converges to the US dollar, right? Everybody goes to the US dollar, and Bitcoin rises and floats and starts to correlate with regular assets like stocks and everything like that. And the idea is that when there's hyperinflation, Bitcoin will hold its value, probably like stocks, probably like property and such like that, as long as there's not a mortgage crisis. And that will probably prove that it is its own asset class that is worthwhile to hold. And I believe that's going to happen as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I could, you know, keep on talking to you about this. Definitely personal passion of mine, but we have some grounds to cover here, also on DAOs, of course. But before we get to that, you know, what about adoption? Like, I mean, do you ever see a risk of, you know, this being sort of this, you know, somebody tweeted the other day, like, you know, what if Web3 turns out to be IoT? Like, you know, that the adoption is just not, you know, happening to the degree that it needs for, you know, these valuations to be coming back, or this ecosystem to really, you know, have a lasting, sustainable impact on technology.
So I think adoption, we're currently at 1998 in terms of adoption compared to the internet. So where the internet was in 1998 is where we are now, kind of thing, or vice versa. I forget what it is. So we're at about 150 million users. That's how many users there are in the internet. Mm-hmm. 1998, there was a small crash, and then 2003 there was another crash, and that was also gut-wrenching as well. And I think that we are now, if we look, there's 8 billion people on Earth. That means that we are out of 150. So what are we? We're like less than 10% of the way towards full adoption globally. And if you believe that this technology has kind of the principles that allow for more pushing control and power back in, I think that the momentum is inexorable. You're not going to stop this. There's many ways that you could, but I do believe that crypto is resilient enough, and there's a core group of people, especially the earlier cohorts. They're all flush in cash. You have new money coming in, so there's a lot of money in the space, and the innovation is exploding. Like the number of projects that I'm starting to see come out, even within the Ocean ecosystem, we've had 400 proposals, 200 teams, and that's purely on one vertical in the data space. And what's going to happen is, because of the dynamics of crypto, of putting value on things that you weren't able to put value on before, like intellectual property, like NFTs, like all this sort of stuff, artwork, creative stuff, social networking stuff, we're going to have successive waves of monetization, tokenization of these assets, which the internet only touched a bit of it. The internet destroyed kind of existing publishing, music, movies, and stuff like that, their distribution channel, because it made it free. Well, what crypto is doing is going to make it a price for these assets on top of other things. And so whoever is able to unlock each of those successive kind of industry sectors or topic sectors is you're creating billions of value with each one of those. And so
Yeah.
if you just think of this explosion like fireworks and stuff, if we can get like hundreds of different areas that are being covered, and I do believe it'll be hundreds or thousands of areas, then we're creating billions with each one of those starbursts.
Yeah. I mean, this is the exciting part, I guess, you know, to kind of say something positive about the bear market, which is, you know, teams are building, and I'm very bullish seeing, you know, what will come out of this bear market. I mean, the last bear market brought us DeFi, it brought us NFTs, and, you know, I'm sure we will see other really incredible applications coming out after this market. Speaking of, like, what you know, DAOs, you know, were certainly, you know, one of those things also that seem to have gotten a lot of traction. What do you think are like some of the applications that we could maybe see in a year or two really have a lot more mainstream adoption? Is there something or you know, a space that, you know, we have up and coming founders here in our cohort? You know, is there an area of crypto that you think if you were starting out now, you would really dive deep into and see if you could build in that specific vertical?
So for DAOs specifically, I think that the main, we'll take a step back. So as I said, the crypto puts a value on things we couldn't value before. Currency, which is Bitcoin, processing, computer processing, Ethereum, data, which is what we're doing, creative networks, NFTs, social networks, influencers. Governance is no difference. With crypto, we're able to place a value on governance, and that is something very powerful. So not only are we going to be able to explore the many different models for governance, we're also going to be able to put a value and price on governance. And right now, if you think that your democratic system, wherever you are in the US, in Germany, or whatever, is ossified, it's not working for the people as well as it could be. Right now, DAOs put a price on governance. It puts a value on it. And we've never thought about what is the cost or value of our government. We know viscerally because when you go to Germany or whatever, you feel things working, you feel that whatever, but you know, there's different aspects that may be oppressive, or you don't think that you don't like the rules. But in general, you feel that there's a structure there that you can viscerally feel, but you can't value it. Well, DAOs make that value explicit. So if you hold tokens and you're part of a DAO and you're participating in DAO, you are actually in real time seeing how a public market values that governance and how well it's going, which is a very interesting idea. So
that's a really interesting take on it.
Yeah, and so where is a DAO useful? In most projects right now, I think it's allocation of capital, allocation of treasury. That's how we use our DAO currently, and we think that's useful because, of course, the token holders are the owners of the network, so therefore they should have a say in where we deploy new capital. That's one way. But there's other things, like for instance, I was a limited partner with this Metacartel Ventures. It was a kind of a VC DAO, so founders funding other founders, and we would get together in multiple working groups and essentially redevelop how VCs do things and the workflows to bring in, vet, and assess, and then invest in new projects. And so I was there for about 60 different investments, and there's a whole bunch of other things. Like, where else can you have a DAO? You can have something like a data union. So I'm starting to see emerging this concept of data union, where people aggregate their data, and then that data union would be responsible for both aggregating and distributing and marketing that data to everybody in a very ethical way. So all the people providing the data are able to monetize their data, and then the data union is representing their interests to everybody else who might want to buy it. That's also a DAO. So there's a host of DAOs. So you could also have NFTs, artists grouping together to create a DAO marketplace, or sorry, an NFT marketplace with a DAO managed by a DAO. And so I think that the interesting thing with a DAO is that we're going to be able to test out new types of governance models. We're probably going to recreate, reinvent, repeat a lot of the same mistakes of the existing governance model. Maybe we end up with the same structures we have today, like some sort of executive branch, some sort of operational branch, and then the DAO members voting that in. Maybe there's going to be other governance models that we're going to start seeing that emerge that are completely different, or at least hybrids of what we currently see, and that's what I'm really interested in seeing.
So, I mean, spinning this analogy to governments, further, so would you say that, like distribution of resources, this is, where DAOs really make sense, but when it comes to actually building a product, I mean, this is just friends of mine that work, and are part of DAO projects, like their feedback, I mean, this is very qualitative on a small subset of people, but their feedback often was like, it's, building something together as a DAO is really hard, product development. And I guess also governments, right, have a tough time, building and making and producing and manufacturing, etc. And that's maybe something better, for the private sector to do. So is that something in line with your experience?
Absolutely. I think to recreate the forms of governance in enterprise, in our public systems, NGOs, all of that has been refined over 1,000 years, or let's say since the industrial age. Let's say the governance models we have are an artifact of the industrial age. It's a, let's say, 300-year-old kind of structure, and it's there for a reason. We're heading into, obviously, the knowledge economy, the way that people are doing remote work, people are able to have agency anywhere on Earth. So I don't know from how many countries people are participating today, but this is kind of an indicator. And for that, you may need a new type of governance model and methods and procedures to help make things more efficient. But recreating this stuff, especially if you're trying to build something, is very hard, because you're not only are you trying to build a product that people want to use, you're also trying to build governance structures on top of that. So nothing is solid, right? Mm-hmm. Nothing is solid in what you're building. But I will say this, with DAOs and governance, it will win if the output is superior to an existing company with what they could do in a new field. So what I'm saying, mm-hmm. I'll repeat in a different way. If you ask Mercedes to build another car, and then you set up a company to build a competing car, you'll most likely fail, because Mercedes is doing something else that they've already done before. So instead of a Model S, they're going to build a Model K, whatever, right? You're not going to beat Mercedes on that. But if you ask Mercedes to build, let's say, a knowledge network for automotive companies, and you're going to compete with them using a DAO, the idea is that if you're doing something in a space that is relatively new, where the governance could be a differentiating factor, because you're able to get more out of each individual participant and stakeholder, you could outperform a Web 2 existing or Web 1 economy company. And that's where we're going to see DAOs win.
And then, another decision that, is, I guess, somewhat related, well, to almost everything in crypto is, when to launch a token. So Ocean Protocol has launched a token. It's been probably 2 years now, something like that.
Yeah, 3.
Something like that, I think, from my memory. And like, what have you learned in devising your token? I mean, like, to break it down into kind of simple things for these early stage founders here in the call, what are some of the advice you would give to anybody thinking about, like, when should I launch a token, like how should my token be distributed, etc., or any resources that you can point people to?
So I'll give 2 kind of perspectives on this. First off, because we are doing a lot of token engineering stuff, my co-founder Trent McConaughey kicked off this working group called Token Engineering, and it's been taken up by a large community now. There's hundreds of people who are part of it. It's something we gifted to the community, so that's a resource. Token Engineering, it's a group of people who are looking at token designs, and that kind of fits into how you would design a DAO token model. Go there, that's probably the best resource there is. It was built by people who would actually model the effects of various token designs, emission schedules, the stakeholders, all that sort of stuff. Very good. Now, Ocean specific. We released the token, we weren't the first set of cohorts that released tokens, like in late 2016, early 2017. We were one of the later ones. So we did our token raise 2017. We released the token like 2019. It took a while to build. We wanted to imbue value and utility into the token before we released it. I think today it's going to be a little bit different. But before I get to that, it's when we release the token, we kept a certain supply because we knew that it would take a while to build up a data economy. We knew that this was going to be a very, very hard problem. So we kept a lot of token reserve to incentivize the community.
Hey, Bruce, you're back.
Yeah, sorry. Now I'm on
No
my
worries.
mobile. Something happened with my hotel. So when I was talking about tokens, we were trying to imbue value into the token before we released. And so today, there's every type of spectrum of model you can have with the token. So you can do a fair launch where the team gets nothing, and the team has a design where they can maybe get some tokens in the early stage because they're one of the early ones. That's probably the most current model where you do some sort of fair launch. There's a traditional one where you keep, let's say, 5 to 10% for the team and you distribute to investors and shareholders and stuff like that. So it really depends on your use case, on how you want to set up the incentives. Are you enterprise focused? Are you community focused? If you're enterprise focused, you go more towards investors and the connection is tighter. You have to have more utility built in before you release the token. If you're community based, you can just build some front end with some smart contracts and release it in and then let the community start earning over time. But what I would recommend is that you have enough flexibility for the future, because things happen where maybe this crisis happens and you need to sell more tokens to fund your treasury just to keep the project going, or you save it for later to incentivize community later.
And what about social tokens? It seems to me that, you know, this was really emerging like maybe 12 months ago. Then NFTs seem to have taken over when it came to, you know, these kind of use cases that we had seen with social tokens, gating content, for example, or, you know, using tokens to orchestrate community behavior. What do you think, you know, social tokens will look like moving forward? Like, is this a space worth exploring more for early stage founders?
Absolutely. We're at a greenfield. So any permutation, any kind of idea that can be instantiated with tokens, you should try. We're going to see which ones work. Some are going to fail, not because the idea was bad, but just because it was too early or what have you. But yeah, no, gating tokens are fantastic. There's one of them that I know of in San Francisco. It was a guy who had set up a crypto wallet. He called it Balance. And as part of that, he had developed this huge network. He's a huge networker. And so what he did was start setting up parties in San Francisco for founders. And then he said, okay, only people who have this token are allowed to show up. And it works. I mean, the token is huge value. And then he uses that to fund his daily life. You can do this with influencers. So instead of what's that one? Friends with benefits? Sort of friend. Not friends with benefits. No,
friends with benefits, like, you know, right?
No, I've heard of that.
I don't mean the, you know, what maybe some people are thinking. No, but you have you not heard of the community Friends with Benefits?
No, I haven't, but it's
a crypto community. You should definitely check it out. It's they use social tokens. It's a Discord, basically. It started as a Discord, and they released the Friends with Benefits token. I mean, the name is quite genius. Also, it's definitely catchy. It is a play, of course, on the other, but it's grown into a pretty big. I think at one point they had $40 million treasury, and you know, the people that bought in early into the community, that it was roughly $1 one Friends with Benefit token, and so they paid $75 for entry into the community. At one point, last time I checked, that price was like $15,000. So the early folks could also sell their token and leave the community. So pretty interesting mechanism.
Yep, I think Trent was actually one of the early. He was right on that. He's joined 2 or 3 of these already. Yeah. So yeah, I believe gating tokens is fantastic. So anything that you can use with a NFT or a fungible token.
Yep.
Try out these models, because that's what they're there for. And that's part of the governance model too. So that relates back to how do you govern this token once you release it. So you could have a very simple. I meant OnlyFans. OnlyFans is one way that you could port your OnlyFans into some sort of access token, and then you own that. And then maybe it's limited to like 500, because only the most 500 most enthusiastic followers. But then the token can rise over time, and then access is limited. this type of thing.
Bruce, thank you so much. We're just on the dot, 12 my time and your time, I believe, 6 o'clock in Europe. So thanks so much for sharing your time with us today.